And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Tuesday morning's flying weather showing a disturbance moving across the northern part of the state here, bringing IFR from the eastern Arctic coast, trailing back in toward the to the Kobuk Valley there. Marginal VFR, eastern Norton Sound, Yukon Delta, Nunivak Island, northern Bering Sea. To the north and south, though, VFR, and then areas of marginal VFR from Nikolsky all the way out to Shimianatu. VFR here, much of the central and southern part of the state. And then we've got IFR covering all of the southeast coast westward here to Yakutat. And by the afternoon, southeast coast here, still all IFR, becoming marginal late in the day for Yakutat, and then VFR, North Gulf Coast, Kodiak Island, Alaska Peninsula, northward to the Brooks Range and into the North Slope and eastern Arctic coast. Still some lower conditions there on the western Arctic coast. Northern Bering Sea becomes VFR, while the remainder of the Bering Sea here is marginal VFR, and about Nikolsky westward for the Aleutians as well. But on Alaska Island, Alaska Peninsula, VFR to Kodiak, and that holds through Wednesday morning. South of the Brooks Range, VFR, right down into the Gulf of Alaska, marginal VFR for the Bering Sea, marginal VFR from the Brooks Range to the Arctic coast, IFR still entrenched over the southeast coast with marginal VFR up to about Yakutat or so. And going to Wednesday afternoon, finally, marginal VFR now for the Panhandle, VFR Yakutat, all the North Gulf Coast, Kodiak, Alaska Peninsula, northward there. But from the Brooks Range out to the Arctic coast, marginal VFR, northern Bering Sea, VFR, including St. Lawrence Island, Nunivak Island, Pribilofs, and the Aleutians, marginal VFR. Passes for the Brooks Range Tuesday, VFR for both Anatuvik and Atigan, and also Lake Clark and Merrill. The entire Alaska range will be VFR for the day on Tuesday. Rainy, windy, Isabel, Mentasta, and Tanita as well, VFR. Portage, VFR, but Chilkoot and White, IFR. Freezing levels 2,000 to 4,000 feet here across the southeast coast. Otherwise, at the surface, right across the eastern Aleutians, south of the Pribilofs, and south of the North Gulf Coast. Icing for Tuesday. The only area that could see some significant icing would be here from Yakutat and down along areas of the southeast coast. Otherwise, nothing of any significance anywhere else around the state. Jet stream, 33,000 foot winds. Westerlies here, 105 knots there, coming across the Bering Strait there, and then diminishing down to about 85 knots into the interior. Much lighter winds here down to the south, and then 70 to 80 knot westerlies there, cutting across Dixon Entrance, clipping the southern Panhandle. And then south of this ridge here, through the Bering Sea, we've got easterlies at 70 knots for the Aleutians. 9,000 feet, northeast winds 40 knots for the Alaska Peninsula, turn easterly to 55 knots for Adak and Atka. High pressure across the Bering Sea and north of the ridge there, west-northwest 50 to 55 knots, blowing in across St. Lawrence Island. And westerlies, 45 knots there on the Arctic coast. And for 3,000 feet, west winds 40 to 45 knots across the North Slope and Arctic coast. And then 35 knot winds here coming along and just west of the Alaska Range, eastern Kuskokwim Valley, and then extending down across the central Aleutians at about 40 knots. Otherwise, we've got south winds working in from Dixon Entrance into Prince of Wales Island, Ketchikan, Net, and Metlakatla there at about 35 knots. With that, could be a little bit of light to isolated moderate turbulence there for the southern Panhandle, and light to isolated moderate turbulence for the Arctic coast and at least a portion of the North Slope. And for the central Aleutians, Adak and Atka, look for considerable moderate turbulence.